everybody. It is such a pleasure to welcome you all out to our first leadership forum of the year, and the first one that we've held now for 18 months. So it's nice to finally be back doing leadership forums. And I'm so pleased that our very first guest is our friend and colleague on our National Advisory Board, David Jenkins, who today, in addition to serving as our kickoff leadership forum guest, is going to be honored as our Distinguished Executive Alumnus of the Year Award, the highest award, highest honor that the Huntsman School of Business at Utah State is able to confer. So, David, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joining Dave today are his wife, Lynette, his two daughters, Christina and Caitlin, and also his parents, Robert and Debbie. And we're delighted to have you, Ronald and Debbie, and we're glad to have all of you here with us today. Dave, before we jump into talking about sort of the leadership lessons that you've picked up along the way and your experience at Conservice and so forth, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and maybe a little bit about growing up here in the Valley and meeting Lynette and your family?
Wonderful. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here today. It's an honor, and it's always fun to come back to where the roots are, in a sense. As I was thinking about it this morning, I realized that our family has 5 generations of association with Utah State at this point. So daughters have attended Utah State. Of course, my wife and I attended here. We met in the business building many, many years ago now. As we were taking a class, we sat by each other, and the rest was history. So magic can happen here. My dad attended here. My grandpa and grandma Jenkins attended here. And my great-grandfather, Calvin Fletcher, was the first dean of the art school here.
Fantastic.
So I think that makes 5 generations. So it's fun to be here and to walk through the halls and to remember times gone by. And when we look at history here, I was just an ordinary kid in North Logan that just goofed off and did everything kids should do. And attending here, I don't think there was anything particularly spectacular about anything I did, but worked hard and studied hard and figured the world was in front of me and chased after it from there. But this was a great foundation with the wonderful teachers that were here and the experiences that were had, and it's a fond memory for sure.
You mentioned the 5 generations. What is it that you took from your parents and grandparents you think that was particularly important to you?
They've always taught that education gets you further.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of educational background in their lives and careers as well. And so that's always been an important factor, that if you want to do better and do well in life, the more you learn will definitely be a great help in achieving that.
Right. I have a similar background. My parents both met here at Utah State. Dad was from Logan, mother was from Benson Ward. She grew up on a dairy farm out in the middle of the valley. Their parents also were here in Cache Valley. My grandmother was born on the same day as Utah State University was born,
Wow.
March 8th, 1888. So I share that same sense of heritage with you. And I can remember one of the things that my parents always used to say was, remember who you are and who you represent. Did you ever get lessons like that?
Constantly. Yeah.
Well, you've done a great job with your career. Dave, you started out in business administration, and then you decided to go into human resources. I think in business administration it was maybe a little bit more numbers, but then you turned over to the people side. Tell us a little bit about the combination of those two disciplines.
Sure, it's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you're in conflict with each other. You've got
Right.
the business management side and all the numbers and dollars and everything you're trying to do there, and then you have the people side of it. And so I actually really like that conflict there. And in fact, one of the first private equity investors that I had in the company said that the main reason he invested is he was so intrigued by the possibility of an HR guy leading a company. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to see how it would turn out.
Right.
Fortunately, it turned out very well for him and his company and many others since then. But, in my view, businesses are all about people and who's in that. And sometimes people lose sight of that. And when you lose sight of that, things change. And so people have to be central to everything, and understanding that human dynamic and behavior, I think, is critical.
Was that philosophy present at the very beginning of Conservice as well?
It was present before Conservice.
Before, yeah.
So, like many people, I think when you're going through college, you have jobs you don't like, and each of those were learning experiences. And I can remember telling myself, if I ever have the opportunity to have a business, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
It's going to focus on people and the outcomes that we can achieve together.
That's great. I guess you can learn almost as much from negative examples as you can from positive examples. It sounds like you were reacting to some of those negative examples.
I think that's right. In fact, negative situations probably have greater learning impact than positive ones.
Yeah. Just give us a little bit of the scope of Conservice today. I should mention that the business is focused on providing customized metering experiences, I think, for mostly apartments and now maybe some commercial businesses as well. And that one of the things that you've done in the process, not only have you built a great business, but you've actually ended up lowering our carbon imprint quite significantly. I think if I saw the numbers correctly, you've saved over 30% of the electricity that's used in the business in the businesses that you serve. Is that correct?
It is. It's water and electricity.
Water and electricity.
So the company's evolved over time. It started out very basically in utility billing and has evolved into what we now call utility management. Mm-hmm. And it focuses on a wide range of things from the utility bills to the conservation efforts. And there's a new phase in the world now. It's called ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. And we just did an acquisition last week in regards to building our ESG footprint here, which in this case focuses on the environmental elements and the carbon footprint and how we can make the most for our customers in managing their consumption and their costs and the impact that has on the world as a whole. So that's becoming more and more centric to what we do, and the demand for it has been exponential recently.
And the scope of the business, I don't know if your sales numbers are public, but the number of employees?
Sure. We have, I believe, 2,500 members of the team. Makes us the largest for-profit employer in Cache Valley here. I think by a large number. It's hundreds of millions in revenue, and it's a very profitable business and doing well that way, and has had 20% growth every year since we started.
Phenomenal.
Including
over a 20-year period, or a 21-year period.
21-year period now. Our birthday was August 28th of 2000, so 21 years now.
At that rate, Dave, you'll be bigger than the economy of California in about 32 years.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's sustainable, but we were pleased to see the same growth level last year, even with the COVID impacts that are there. And this year we're ahead of last year thus far in sales growth. So a lot of positive growth there, and to think about what it takes to grow 20% per year when you get to be a reasonably sized company is pretty significant.
Boy, I'll
the
say.
Impact on the scaling ability and the impact on people and your influence that you have.
And you're employing a lot of Aggies.
We do. It's not formal, but a lot of people surmise that we're the largest employer of Aggies.
Yeah.
So, and statistically, that probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Given where we sit.
Exactly. So, yeah. What was important to you about locating the business here in Cache Valley? I know you've had people who've tried to move you out of Cache Valley. What is it about Cache Valley you think is part of the concept behind Conservice?
Well, it's home for one, so
Yeah.
it's nice to work close to where you want to live, that's for sure. And it's been a big differentiator for us in in our culture. When we would have potential customers and customers come visit our location here, within a few minutes they were saying things like, wow, it's really different here, and the people are really nice. And those are things that resonate and stick with people, and that's been part of it. And I've been a believer that God puts a lot of really smart people all over the world. They aren't concentrated in any one area, and it's a matter of finding those people and unleashing the potential inside of them to do amazing things. And I don't think this area is any different, and we've been able to find and work with a lot of incredible people.
You know, it's interesting. You don't say anything about low cost.
No. It's about the right people, and great people sometimes cost a lot of money, but great people are a great return on investment.
You know, one of the first years, I don't know if I ever told you this story, Dave, but the first year I was dean, the then executive director of the local chamber of commerce came to see me, and she said, Dean Anderson, we have a problem. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, we can't get enough students to work in our businesses, and the businesses in Cache Valley really depend on the student workers. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And she said, it's because they don't want to work for $7, the minimum wage. And I said, you've come to the wrong place. My job is to make your job a lot harder, to make our students so valuable that they wouldn't work for a multiple of $7 an hour. And, you know, I really love your philosophy about focusing in on the value of human capital, developing that value, and making it worth a lot. Because I think, and I know you share this, Dave, this is such an extraordinary place that we have the privilege of living in and working in. And these people and our Aggie students are so outstanding that there's really a tremendous amount that can be accomplished with imagination, energy, and commitment.
Right, totally agree. And this area makes it easy to do that.
It sure does. I want to go back just for a moment to some of the elements of your business. And you mentioned you've just made an acquisition that focuses in on ESG. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, acquisitions have been an important part of our company in the last several years as part of our growth strategy and diversifying in size and meeting customer expectations and needs as things evolve. And again, a lot of smart people out there, and it's good to make them part of your team instead of compete with them. And so those acquisitions are good. And the ESG's become a very important thing recently, and we wanted to make sure we were a part of that. We had done some work with that over a period of time, but only recently have we been able to figure out, or as the market has changed, that we can now monetize that. It's one thing to do a lot of things for free,
right?
But it's hard to stay in business doing that. And so it's nice that the market has recognized the value of that, and that while they pay us for those services now, the benefit exceeds the cost. And that's been quite an education process for a period of time, but that's now really turning the corner there. And so we're excited that that's a significant growth opportunity.
You're looking for things where you can create value, you can communicate that value, but then you can also capture a significant amount of value so that you can sustain your business.
Right, and it's, market positioning is type of thing. So trying to be on the front end of a lot of these things is an important part of being successful.
What specifically does that part of your business focus on?
So this, again, it's looking for your carbon footprints, the reporting, what your consumption is. Can you make investments in the real estate that we manage the utilities on? Can there be upgrades that are made? Is there better purchasing that can be done? And then looking down the supply chain of where does this energy come from, and are there better alternative sources for that make sense, either from a social standpoint or from a financial standpoint.
What role does data analytics play in that business?
That is the core of what we do with that now, and that's why we made that acquisition, so we could get a lot of smart minds already working on this solution and integrate it into what we had. We have a huge data set, and they have the analytic piece, and so combining our huge data set with their analytic skills will generate the best outcomes, we think, in the market.
That's great. As an economist, I like to metric anything I can and have the user pay for it.
Right.
And of course, your business, as it evolved over time with measuring water and electricity at the apartment level within an apartment complex was a really important part of that. And when we're facing a drought here in the state of Utah, it's astonishing to me that we're not having more talk about putting meters on all of our consumption of water.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the weakest areas we have right now that would generate the greatest return, really low cost and great benefit to that. So I would agree.
So, Dave, let's talk a little bit more about this philosophy. You said it preceded the development of Conservice. Was it sort of driving the way in which you thought about the kind of a business you wanted to start?
So I've been, I guess, a serial entrepreneur in mind when I was young, read business books that probably other kids wouldn't be reading. Very interested in that, and then coming to school here, and then observing other people, and then being in the workforce myself. And it's just a constant learning experience, and then trying to apply that for the better. It's not just copying what people do, but are there ways to improve upon that for the good of everybody? And there are certain things that I think happened in my life that cemented that. Religion's a very important part of how I view people and what should be done in their service. I observed my father who's here, and he ran the Logan City Library for a number of years. And I can remember the time he came home and he talked about when people left their employment there, usually because of life events or whatnot, that they would cry. And I thought, that's an amazing thing to think about in a business, that people have
that kind of attachment.
That type of attachment, emotion tied to leaving their place of employment versus rejoicing.
Yeah.
That they're leaving. That you want them, there's a sad rejoicing, in a sense that they've had a wonderful experience. They're sad they're moving on, but life events happen. There's always a lot of change that way.
Yeah. What was it about the opportunity that drew you together with other founders and other partners to Conservice?
But with all businesses, it has to start with solving a problem.
Yeah.
If you're going to be successful. And in this case, the problem was utility management in the mid-90s was new concept, particularly in the real estate world with apartment communities, and what you did and how you did that, and the impact you could have with it. And it was really driven initially by large banks saying, you guys need to get control of these expenses. How are you going to do that? There were some companies that came over from Europe who had done some basic things with that for a number of years and came here and started the movement somewhat. And then we got into it because I was working, one of my partners and we have a real estate firm here in Logan, and the banks were basically saying the same thing, you need to manage these utilities better, and so we started looking for that. Signed up with a company, and it was a disaster. And fortunately, it was a disaster. And so that opened up the door to compete against them because they could not deliver what was necessary. They were not taking advantage of technology, they did not understand the industry, and they didn't have a service element to what they did. And so those were opportunities to do that. And when we started Conservice, there were 75 other companies in the utility billing space.
Wow.
We were the smallest at the time. As time went by, we became the largest utility management company, so it expanded the breadth of what we serviced, but we became larger than the rest of all the competitors together.
My goodness.
By several multiples. And so I think we had the right formula to get there. It was a leap of faith at times as we made adjustments and pivoted through the environment through those 20 years, but it worked out.
It's interesting. A lot of times people strive to be the first mover in a new space. You weren't the first mover. You were 75 others were there when you started out. That would have been a little bit daunting. What gave you the edge, would you say, that allowed you to grow so quickly and to establish yourself as dominant? And how long did it take for you to become number one from 75?
Well, I think to be number one took about 12 to 15 years.
Wow.
So it was just a steady attack on that process that was there. I've always thought about what is it that made it different? Why did we succeed? There's a number of elements, I think, that can be part of that answer. One of those is you have competitors that aren't as good as you. That's a great element to success.
Nothing like a dissatisfied customer to
Yeah.
create an opportunity.
It's great. If I had competitors that were as good or better than us, that would be a serious challenge to success. But when you're better than them, it's great. I remember one of our competitors, who at the time was probably the largest in the space, they were losing a lot of business to us and continue to do so. And they put up throughout their building the word Conservice with a red circle and a line through it. Can you imagine what that does for morale?
Yeah.
When everybody in your organization's focused on somebody else's business. Several of their employees called me, wonder if they could get a job. It was fantastic. In fact, anytime that particular competitor did anything, and people would ask me, well, what do you think about that? It's like, well, whatever they're doing, we are not doing it. And that was a great formula for that. And then, having great people in our organization and culture were extremely important in what we did. But I think the final answer to this is, a few years ago, I had a room full of our customers. And I asked them basically the same question. Why do you do business with us? Why did you select us? Why have you stayed with us? Because our attrition was nearly zero. And the answer somewhat surprised me. They simply said, and this was probably 9 out of 10 individuals in the room as a percentage, said that it was because they trusted us to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. So we weren't selling necessarily utility services. Yeah. We were selling trust.
Yeah.
And coming to that realization was pretty significant in how we continue to approach things going forward. So our particular business is a business that requires perfection.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to receive a utility bill that's wrong, unless it's in their favor, I guess. But it's got to be perfect. And so that expectation is very high. The problem is it's a business of people, using technology and such. When you have people, there's not going to be perfection. And so that trust that we had established, that when we recognize that we do something wrong or make a mistake, that we do the right thing in fixing it, was significant. And we'd also do things in the favor of the customer before we would do it in the favor of ourselves.
Yeah.
Part of that came because I had background in real estate management and understood the customer. And we always said, if it's harder for us and easier for them, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the best financial model in the short run, it appears, but when you keep customers for a very long time because you've done the right thing, it's a very good financial model.
The cost of a dissatisfied customer is huge, isn't it?
It's massive.
Not just with that one customer, but the over the lifetime of all the people that customer can affect.
Right.
Versus all the good people that they will affect if they're a satisfied customer.
Negative is noisy, positive is usually quiet.
That's
so
right.
It's very exponential difference there. So it's very important to try to have
your focus on trust causes me to think of our partners, Stephen M.R. Covey, Sean Covey, their father, Stephen Covey, and our Covey Leadership Center. And you've been a great contributor to the Covey Leadership Center. Could you talk a little bit about why you've found that a place that you'd like to be associated with?
It's an interesting background on that. 20, 30 years ago, when I was probably still attending here, maybe even, started reading his book, probably when I was in high school actually, and then went to one of their training courses up in Park City area, and just started really incorporating the 7 habits and these other things that are taught into who I wanted to be as an individual. And then you see how you can apply that into what you do the rest of your life. And it's been highly impactful. A lot of those simple phrases there, simply like sharpen the saw or seek first to understand and then to be understood, et cetera, become very core to how I would approach problems every day. And then as I met with the Covey leadership team and made that connection that a significant amount of the things I have incorporated into who I am and how I applied it had its roots in those materials that had been created and then applied, made me recognize that we needed to continue that going forward. Of course, that takes financial means to do that, and people giving their time and teaching and those side of things. But because it had so much impact on me, I knew it could have and continue to have significant impact on others. And the association with the school just made it all the better, because that's a great blending of great outcomes.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences with Stephen Covey as well, and I appreciate the privilege that we've had to be good friends with, not only with Stephen himself, but now with his family. Since then, it's a real honor for our school to be able to have him associated, his name, his legacy associated with us here. It's interesting you say you went to one of his training sessions in Park City. I did the same thing in about 1994, only it was at Snowbird.
There you go.
And very, very meaningful, powerful personal impact that Stephen had on me in that session, and I can still feel it today as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I remember in the train, I don't know if you received one of these, but there was a goose with a golden egg.
Oh, yes.
Still sits in my office, and it's still an important factor in how you look at
The
things.
PPC balance.
There's so many things that were part of that are just basically common sense.
Right.
And remembering and applying that is a great factor.
Highly refined common sense, and the result of a massive study that Stephen did on the history of success literature in America and the difference between what he called the personality ethic and the character ethic, and how important it was to develop the character ethic, which had kind of fallen out of favor in the half century before Stephen wrote his book, and now I think it's over 40 million copies that have been sold. It doesn't count the number of copies that have been pirated, which is probably equal in terms of the...
That's kind of ironic, though, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting. John Huntsman once said that he knew that Stephen was really big when he was driving through the streets of Mumbai and some kid came up to him at the window and tried to sell him a copy of 7 Habits, for about $1 or something like that. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about culture. You mentioned it, and clearly this discussion about 7 Habits is an important part of it. I think it was Deming or one of those great thinkers who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. What is it about culture that is so important in a business?
Really, it's the essence of why and how you do things. It's, again, goes back to trust. Mm-hmm. People have to trust that when certain things happen, good and negative within an organization, that they know how it's going to turn out. And that's culture, in my mind. So if somebody makes a mistake, what's going to happen? That's the culture that you do. That's not necessarily something you write up on the wall. It's things that people observe. Mm-hmm. What happens. And I would, in the early days when I would do a lot of the training in the organization, I would tell this story about an individual who worked at a large organization, and he made a mistake that cost the company $1 million. Of course, his boss calls him into the office, and he's pretty sure he's getting fired, and he says, well, I'll just pack my stuff and leave. And his boss says, oh, no, wait a minute. I just spent $1 million training you. Why would I get rid of you?
Exactly.
And so that's sort of that approach that we take, that, hey, mistakes happen. I would rather know about the mistakes and the problems than be surprised about them later.
Yeah.
And so I tried to have a culture that was very open about what happens, acknowledging we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes, let's know about it so we can fix it now before it becomes a bigger problem.
So as CEO, you would actually conduct these training sessions and tell these stories?
Right.
And so forth.
Right.
Boy, that's pretty unusual for a CEO to spend his time training. Usually they delegate it to the human resources department or somebody, or maybe an outsourced person like that. What impact did that have on the business?
So, again, one of the responsibilities of a CEO is vision and culture. And how can you have impact on that if you aren't actually involved in it?
Right.
As the company grew, it became more and more difficult to have that one-on-one touch. So we made evolutions of that through time. One of those things I did was what we call Questions for Dave, and every month, anybody in the company could submit questions, and I would answer them. Did it first in more of the management groups, and I just stand in front of everybody and take questions constantly.
You do it
the whole hour.
in real time.
Real time.
Yeah.
without any indication what the questions were going to be. And it was so popular, we expanded it to the whole company. I couldn't get the whole company in any one geographic location.
Sure.
So they would submit the questions, and I'd respond to all of them. The only questions we wouldn't take in that format were compensation questions, because that's more of a personal thing than a company thing. But pretty much everything else would come in. So you might have questions about why the soda in the machines is a certain flavor that they don't like.
Pepsi versus Coke?
Exactly. Or you may have something that's very significant that's impacting the team or customers and want to know about that. And again, people would say, well, gosh, don't you get annoyed with some of those questions that are so pointed or negative? And I said, never. I want to know about that. I want to know what's going on in the organization at every level. And that was my way of being able to connect with it when it became too big to be able to personally connect with everyone. If you do the math on a company that size, if you spent 1 minute with each person, it takes almost a week.
Yeah.
And so that's just not possible. So you have to find new ways to connect, make it feel personable. And when I'd meet with each department, we'd bring them into the auditorium, and they each had their opportunity to stand up and ask any question they wanted to. Just take those. Every new hire that would come in, we'd put them in once a month in the auditorium and just let them have a free-for-all, throw questions at me on anything about anything.
That's phenomenal. One of the teachers that had a great impact on me when I was just starting out as an assistant professor back at the Harvard Business School had a philosophy that he impressed upon me, which was teachers also must learn. And it sounds like you're saying leaders also must learn. This was a great learning experience for you, not just for the people in the audience.
Yeah, I think as a leader, you have to go into every room thinking you're the dumbest person. And work with everybody to become smarter and understand them. Again, that understand beforehand. So you really want to understand what people think, how they view things. I find that my perspective of the world is going to be different than almost everybody else's. And you bring those perspectives together and get the best outcomes.
Fantastic. I'd like to maybe open up the floor to our audience, some of our students, to see if they'd like to ask a question. I think we've got a mic that we can rove around here a little bit. So why don't you be thinking about questions you might like to ask? And if you've got a question, just raise your hand and we'll get a mic over to you. There's one right here. Can you turn it on?
You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Hajar Ben Saha, and I have a question. So from your perspective, what do you think is best for graduate students from business school to make an impact and change in the world or in their community, to have their own business or to be in any position in the business industries?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is probably all of those. So it depends on the individual. Some people are natural leaders and want to make change that way. Some are natural entrepreneurs that want to start business and do that. If you mismatch those, it's going to be a failure. So you have to come to recognizing yourself, what it is that drives you and what you're good at. And that usually requires other people giving you feedback. And you usually only get that if you ask for it. And it's got to be people and you have to have trust to be able to get the right answer. So there's a whole series of elements that build into getting to that right answer there. And then when you feel confident about that, then you go chase after it. And you study, you work hard, you continually are learning. It's not just a one and done thing, it's a lifetime commitment.
Over here.
Thank you. If you could elaborate a little bit more about the conversation the two of you had about culture, specifically wondering if you could elaborate about building that culture. You shared some of the practices that you had, but I can assume at least that there were times in which that you saw certain behaviors or cultural stuff within the organization that were not inherently what you wanted the organization to look and feel and be like. Maybe if you could elaborate how you were able to guide some of that to be able to keep the culture the way you wanted. Was that more top-down? Was it more bottom-up? If you could just elaborate.
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And like most answers, it's complicated. So there's variables in this, and the size of the company is a huge variable in that. So when I could have the entire company sit around my desk, my impact on culture was significant. When there were 2,500 people in the company, my impact on culture becomes much more limited. And part of the training I would do with the management team involved this concept that the culture is what we make it. It's not what I make it anymore. It's what we make it. If you don't like some element of it, then you don't participate in it that way, and you do something different, and that becomes the new culture. So there's guiding principles that I would try to apply. So if things weren't working the way I thought would be a great culture, I had to recognize that, well, maybe that's okay, or maybe that's part of what change is. But then I would go back and revisit with people. This is why we do what we do. Do you remember when? And use stories and examples. And then they've got to come to their own conclusion of, is the new path or the old path the path that they're going to take? But at the end of the day, the culture is the whole organization moving in a certain direction. And everybody's contributing to that. It's not any one person, it's everybody as a whole. And if everybody's buying into this concept of this is how we do it, or this is how we treat people, or this is how we resolve certain conflict, then that becomes that culture going forward. Great question.
So to build off that, have you ever had an instance where you had factions that wanted to go two different directions with culture?
Oh yeah, it's a
Well-
business of people, right?
And how did you resolve that?
So there's 2,500 people there, so there's 2,500 different opinions about how to do that. And for things to move forward, they do have to generate momentum and a lot of buy-in. So you tend to have these little factions, like you said, that try things out. Always listen to those, keep it in perspective, and then educate. So if they're misguided, and a lot of times these type of factions would probably come in the form of being perhaps excessively liberal with money or benefits, and not fully looking at the impact that could have on the organization, customers, or people. So it might be good for this little group right here, but it's negative for this group. And so educating, I found, was the best way. Sit down one-on-one in my office with them and say, tell me how you feel, what's going on. Let me share with you my experience and why and who I'm concerned about. Never really try to make it about myself, but the larger group. For example, maybe somebody came in one time and said, we need to allow animals in our workspace. This is when that big craze of service animals everywhere was going on. And I didn't think that was a good thing, but we listened, and then we gave examples of, well, there are people who are allergic to animals, and we are in a confined workspace. And do you think an animal might be distracting to anybody, and would that affect a customer potentially? Just went through these scenarios, and they came to their own conclusions. May not be the answer they wanted, but they could recognize why we took the position that we did on that, in that situation.
There's an interesting philosophy that says the essence of authority is being able to give reasoned elaboration. In other words, to be able to answer the question why.
I think that's the most successful way to negotiate through challenges like that.
Yeah.
People want to be heard and understood. They don't have to agree. I learned that pretty early. We could disagree, but if we understood each other, I wonder where that's come from too.
Yeah,
Like a Covey thing
exactly.
Too. You can get to the right answer.
I think leaders sometimes take a shortcut and they sort of rely on formal authority rather than the ability to use reasoning as the basis for authority. It sounds like you've really resisted doing that in your business.
Well, that's the easy default because these things take time.
Yeah.
And time's in short supply, it feels like, with all the things that we have to do. So I always tried to allow people to feel like they had the opportunity to invest the time to do it the right way. Because if you don't do that early, you just end up paying for it again and again. It becomes more expensive than just taking the initial time to do it right.
How do you plan to keep people the focus as technology and automation improves?
Well, that's one of the great challenges, and it's been particularly difficult recently with a lot of people working from home. When COVID started a year and a half ago, we were part of that process of putting 2,000 people from the office into their homes and being successful within a few days. Very significant. That's driven a lot of these new conversations about people and technology. I've always taken the stance with people that technology makes their jobs better. It doesn't get rid of jobs. It gets rid of the terrible things about certain jobs and lets people focus on the good things in their jobs. It's easy to do that when you have a company that's growing 20% a year, because you've got to have technology replacing the mundane so you can hire enough people and keep them engaged in the work. Different companies will have different challenges with that, but embracing technology has always been an important part of the Conservice culture. We've got the largest IT department in the whole valley, probably, inside those walls, and we're very focused on what is new and how to do it, and then we engage with the team, the people it impacts, to be a part of the solution so they can see, oh, I hate this part of my job. Well, let's figure out how to do it differently so you can do the things you do like that actually maybe benefit the customer even more. So it's all about the perspective and how that's presented, but it's a reality. You have to embrace technology and you have to continually be applying it.
Dave, you mentioned that the immediate impact of COVID was for you to figure out how you could have 2,000 of your 2,500 or 2,300 employees working remotely. What do you sense will be the long-term impact of COVID on your business and maybe on society more broadly?
This is an awesome debate because the answer is not known and there's so many ways that it can go. But I think we can agree it's going to have an impact and things are going to be different. What that looks like, you can see it in the news every day. Different companies are making different announcements and then adjusting them, and nobody really knows where it's going to go. But flexibility and the way we rethink how we do business is definitely going to be there. Do we need to have a lot of business travel? It feels like probably not, or it will take a long time to recover. People like relationships, though, so how does that balance? We get zoomed out. Where is that balance going to settle? But it's definitely back and forth and up and down, and financial and personal things are all weighing in on this, and it's a very difficult thing to navigate. And then you think about, could it happen again? And then how do you manage that? But we've had, through the 20 plus years, we've had a number of turning points that came up. And I think every challenge presents new opportunity to do things better. So in this case, with COVID and what's happened here, we've actually expanded where we can recruit from. Where we used to try to get everybody here and doing that, now we can actually recruit anybody in the world.
Yeah.
To do the job because we've done it for 18 months remotely. Who cares where they live in the world now?
You know, we have a professor that lives in London, Lord
Right.
Michael Hastings, Member of Parliament, if you can imagine. House of Lords is a professor now,
Right.
Stephen Covey
Right here.
professor, that you've helped us support.
Yep.
It's astonishing to think about it. I used to walk home to the island to where my parents lived and look out over the south end of this valley and say, this is the most beautiful place in the world. I wonder if there's any way I could live here and work in Chicago. I had no idea how that could happen, but
Right.
that's a reality.
Very much a reality. And so it's really changing our business, and I'm sure it's changing every other business in the same ways, that there's just new opportunities, new ways to look at the world, and there's going to be more of those that come. I look back in the last 20 years, we had 9/11, which tomorrow's 20 years that we recognize that. That was a huge turning point in the world, in our country, and how we looked at things. And then you had the 2008 financial crisis, that reset things. That was a great thing for us as a company. We came to recognize how important what we did was. In 2008, everything's dropping off the cliff, and our sales are going through the roof. We came to realize that when things get tough, people have to make tough decisions about their resources,
Yeah.
and we were an instrument to help them make good decisions. They're willing to pay us for that. So now we've got this happening, and we got the ESG thing happening, and these new challenges that come up are just new opportunities. There's never a failure or a setback. It's just, what did you learn from it, and what can you do with it?
How about in terms of leadership style? You and I are wearing suits and a tie. I have to confess, this is the first suit and tie that I've worn for a long time in a business setting.
Same here. It's actually really uncomfortable, so maybe we should have planned ahead. and avoided this. Yeah, there's going to be lots of these type of changes that are coming at us, and it's fascinating to see how the impacts are going to be there.
Yeah. We got other questions?
Okay, so I actually kind of had two questions. The first one was kind of going along with what you're saying about expanding globally and stuff. So, like, as of right now, with your employees and also your customers and clients, like, how far does your reach go? Like, is it local here in Cache Valley, or is it nationwide, global-wide?
Sure. Our customer base is primarily North America. We have about 4 million customers that we manage utilities for. There's some international work happening at this point beyond North America that takes time. There's so many regulations and different things that go through that process, but we have some new products that are in testing in the UK, for example, that are there. We've started using labor pools in different countries to help do some of the work, because particularly here, I think our unemployment rate's below 3%.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard. I remember going to school here, read Dirty economics, saying
Right.
full unemployment is 95%. There's no way to employ the last 5%.
Right.
Well, there is, but it's challenging, and there's difficulties to that. And so it's, like I said, there's smart people all over the world, so why wouldn't we do that? And they love having these kind of jobs and making contributions, and it benefits them and their families as well. And it allows us to hire people here to do other work that maybe is more challenging and a better fit for them. So it all sort of fits together, but the economic world around us we can take advantage of so easily now. The people, the smarts, the financial elements of it, a lot of the same problems. It's great being in utilities because people always need utilities. Anywhere in the world. People need water, they need electricity, they need internet. This is something I learned way early. We manage student housing utilities. If the water goes off at a student housing community, somebody might call us in a few hours. But if the internet goes off, it's like 5 seconds. Hey, something's wrong. It's kind of a weird thing. One's necessary for life and the other one's not, but you wouldn't recognize it in the way the response is.
That's right.
So it's kind of fun.
Dave, we have another question over here? Just one more. Yeah, please.
Kind of, you mentioned you made the transition from utility billing to utility management. Are there any, I don't know, I guess, transitioning or expansions that are kind of on your horizon in the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah, one of the important things I did a number of years ago was commit to being all things utilities, but only all things utilities. There was quite a movement 10 or 15 years ago to try to expand outside of that, and some of our competitors were trying to be everything to everybody, and that turned out to be a failure. As I talked with customers, they said, be really good at what you're really good at.
Yeah.
And so that's been our focus. Now, so that was utilities, and so we've just expanded into a lot of different areas with utilities. There's a lot of areas still to go. This ESG, like I mentioned, is still very much in its infancy. There are several other areas in the consumer space that I think are really fascinating. So the world's still in front of us, and there's significant opportunity.
Let me ask you about your personal horizon. I know you mentioned earlier you kind of had a serial entrepreneur orientation, and I know you've been investing in a lot of entrepreneurial companies, I think maybe 70 or something like that. You've stepped away from day-to-day management, I think. You're now chairman of the board. How do you envision your role over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer if you have a longer horizon than that? How will you secure your legacy in the business as you now step away from day-to-day management?
I think some of that is in the view of what legacy is, and for me it's more of the impact than this is how we've always done things. So new management's there, and they're doing a fantastic job and making lots of changes. When you're growing 20% a year, it's not going to be very long before what it was and what it is are quite different. That's great, as long as we're making smart decisions. So I think my role in that is to help navigate that strategy of how they go forward, how they look at things, how they grow, how they treat people, not losing sight of the core elements, that trust that customers have in us that was core to why they do business with us. And then, personally, taking this experience and applying it into a lot of different places with a lot of different companies and individuals is just a lot of fun for me.
You like to grow companies?
I like to see people be successful, see them grow companies, make a difference in people's lives. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you said that business is a means of creating resources to help other people. That's how it should be used. If you use it for other things, it's a waste.
Right, exactly. And I'm becoming more and more of a fan of companies. While companies will do good things in the community, that's great. But if companies can return those resources to individuals and let them do something great, I think that's even better because it's very personal and they're having that personal impact. So there's probably a blend to that, and that's part of why we did Conservice Cares at Conservice, which we started a number of years ago, which allows every team member to do 2 hours of paid community service every month at a nonprofit.
Yeah.
We didn't tell them where to go to do that. We just said, you have the opportunity, if you want to go do something great in your community every month and get paid to do it. You pick what it is. And the range was huge, and some of it I probably didn't even agree with. But it didn't really matter because it was important to them, and they were having an impact in the community. And there's a number of nonprofits in the Valley here that were very dependent on that time and energy and resources being given to them. And I love that. It wasn't Conservice putting its name on all these things. Look how great we are, we're doing this. No, we empowered the individual to do that. And I think that may be a good model for shareholders as well, to say we're going to give you resources through our success, but go do something great with it.
Yeah. What are you hearing from the community about the impact of Conservice Cares?
Well, they love it. One of my favorite ones is the food bank here in town.
Yeah.
Sometimes just organizations show up with a big truck full of food and say, here you go, we don't know what to do with it, it's yours. Well, they aren't staffed to handle that. Well, we're just almost across the street. So we have a relationship where they can just call and say, hey, can you send over 10 guys? A few minutes, we put out a little email, hey, who wants to go? First come, first serve. In a few seconds, it's there. They're over there. They unhaul or unload that truck and put it where it needs to be, and everybody's happy. Somebody got to help someone else. Things were resolved. We've got a great relationship. And so those type of things happen all the time.
So the Business Council, as you know, has made a kind of a big splash by saying that they're kind of moving away from the Milton Friedman, the only social purpose of a business is to make a profit, to more of a stakeholder management kind of approach. I sense a third way in what you're talking about, Dave.
Right. More individual.
More individual.
Still the same outcome, but not mandating, okay, all you people who work for me, you've got to go do this good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And instead, trusting them to decide what's good and going to do it, but
and
supporting
owning their
them
own
in time and
experience
finances.
in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, we've got to close, but I have to say this has been one of the most interesting conversations we've had in the Leadership Forum. We're proud of you and what you've accomplished. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And now it's my pleasure to bestow upon you, Dave, the Distinguished Executive Alumnus Award. But before I do that, I want to just hold up this magazine. Our current issue of Huntsman Business Magazine's just hit the newsstand. Do we have it out yet? We do. So I'm encouraging you all to pick up a copy and to read our wonderful article about Dave and all the other great things that are in this report. But Dave, if you'll stand up, I want to read your citation and then present it to you. David Jenkins is a loyal Aggie who earned his bachelor's degree in business management in 1995 and a master's degree in human resource management in 1999 from Utah State University's College of Business. Following completion of his degrees, Mr. Jenkins founded Conservice, which has since become a recognized leader in utility management for real estate managers and owners across the United States and Canada. Known for offering comprehensive and customized utility billing solutions, Conservice also places emphasis on reducing operating costs and promoting conservation. Mr. Jenkins currently serves as chairman after retiring in August 2020 as president and CEO. Conservice has earned a place on Inc. magazine's list of fastest growing companies for the last 13 years and continues to grow 20% annually. The company currently employs over 23,000 100 team members and is an important part of the Cache Valley landscape. Mr. Jenkins was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst Young for the Utah region in 2011. He sits on our National Advisory Board for the Huntsman School of Business and is an investor in more than 70 privately held companies in a wide range of industries. He also enjoys working with their family foundation and participating in various philanthropic causes and organizations locally. David Jenkins, for your entrepreneurial spirit, ethical leadership, and your enduring loyalty to Utah State University, we are proud to present you with the 2021 John M. Huntsman School of Business Distinguished Executive Alumnus of the Year Award.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Dave. Thank you. Well earned. Thank you. Thank you. Let's